Hey everyone, today I'm continuing my beginner guides on a topic that I don't think is really talked about enough. If you've read the title, then you know I'm talking about essences. Essences are powerful consumables with one use that apply a stat upgrade of some kind to a hero of your choice. Not all essences are created equal, and some can be useless on certain heroes while being instrumental on others. Each essence is earned by completing its corresponding challenge, found here in the journal. Getting all of these in a single run, while I think may be technically possible, is not realistically very achievable, as it can be very difficult to acquire some of these challenges, as a lot of them may require a specific team comp to fulfill a certain requirement, and the comp you may be running may not have the abilities at hand to fulfill all of these challenges. Now, heroes can have up to 4 essences applied to them, and these cannot be undone or taken away, so lots of players either apply one early by mistake, maybe not realizing that this isn't a good pick for them, or they may be unsure of what to use, so they just sit on them for hours and hours when they could feasibly apply it to a hero and free up some bag space. In this video, I'm going to cover which essences I think are best for which class and role in your party, and which essences are just sort of a nice bonus, but not really impactful. The first thing I'm sure most people are most interested in is what essences should I give to my primary damage dealer. This, realistically speaking, is either going to be a champion or a vanguard in your party, as both are extremely strong with the best damage dealing capabilities in the game. Both of these classes have some shared essences that are good for either, while also having a couple different ones that are more specific to them in particular. Starting with shared essences, the Essence of Annihilation. The Essence of Annihilation offers a flat plus 10% additional weapon damage to the selected hero. This means all of their attacks, all of their skills, abilities, whatever you want to call it, have an increased damage amount. This is just really straightforward, and 10% may not seem like a huge number, but it is a noticeable amount, especially once you start to take damage upgrades that scale off of this new base amount of damage, and it's consistent. For me, having higher consistent damage is very key because you want your hero to be able to get the kill every time when you need them to get the kill. Second is going to be the Essence of Extermination. This is probably one of the most powerful essences in the game. This grants 1 AP per kill for every kill, unlike Gear, which now only applies to the first kill of the turn. Gaining AP on a kill is so powerful because it helps refund and reduce the effective cost of all the different actions you're using to kill your enemies, and with AoEs, you're potentially mitigating the cost entirely. This stacking with other AP per kill skills that these classes have enables your damage dealers to conserve far more AP in the long run over the course of a single turn and continue killing more targets. A third option, though probably one of the weaker options, is the Essence of Mutilation. This provides a 10% chance to deal double damage. This sounds pretty amazing, pretty strong, and can certainly result in some huge spikes in damage. However, in my view, the RNG nature of this essence makes it somewhat unreliable and not very desirable for me. I think this is a fine essence to put on your damage dealer if you have a 4th slot open at the end. This certainly does have the opportunity to cause big spikes, but more than anything, I just think it's unnecessary for your champions or vanguards as they hit such high damage numbers already. This is mostly just unnecessary. Your next consideration should be the Essence of Speed. This essence provides an extra AP to their base pool, and obviously more AP means more actions they can take on their turn. I don't think vanguards really require this essence to perform optimally, as they already have plenty of bonuses to their AP through their skill tree, and they have a lot of gear that also provides additional AP. So for them, you may be better leaving this slot open, give this to someone else, and you can put something else in that your vanguard may need. Champions, however, don't have nearly as many bonuses to their base AP pool like a vanguard, so they can definitely benefit off this a bit more. Moving to a more champion-specific essence, the Essence of Crushing. This provides plus 20% armor breaking on your champion who already has the highest armor breaking capability of any class in the game. This catapults them to such a high percentage that they're going to be deleting all of the armor off your standard enemies, even elites, and just cleaving through all the armor on bosses even extremely quickly. If you are not running a champion, then this can still be useful on your other primary damage dealer, your Vanguard, because as they are doing the most damage, armor breaking scaling off of damage, they can still benefit off this to break the armor off these tough enemies for the rest of your party and these bosses. And this 20% will actually help compensate for their lower armor breaking potential compared to a champion. This isn't maybe the best pick, but if you are struggling with some armor break, this is something you can transfer to them if you are not using a champion. For Vanguards, however, the Essence of Perception is a really solid pick for them, as it will ensure on a non-combat level you will be finding all those extra chests for extra gold and loot throughout the different maps. And in combat, this can actually be a bit of a lifesaver in terms of your kill capacity. It will make it easier to detect traps from farther away, and while you can detect them from one space away, given the sort of normal perception they have, if you're not being careful or you're sort of rushing, it's very easy to just click somewhere, and then your Vanguard goes running into a path, straight through a trap. They take damage, they become slowed. Now they can't reach enemies nearly as efficiently, takes them out of the hidden state. Now you have to re-hide. You're just losing so much AP to a simple mistake that could have easily been avoided. Other than these essences, there are a couple defensive options you may also want to use to round out your primary DPS with, but I'll cover those a bit later. Now moving on to your defenders, your tanks. This is actually really simple. Don't waste your time trying to give them essences that will boost their damage, because their damage is never really going to compare with your DPS. So what you should be focusing on is going all in on what your defenders do best, their defenses. All of these following options I'm about to discuss assume your defender is being positioned properly or using taunt to have the bulk of the attacks directed at them as they should be, because that is how you are going to get the most out of any defender. First up is the Essence of Life. This essence grants plus 5% to their HP, that first health bar. You want to take this one over Vitality because hit points is what they're largely going to be burning through. You don't want them to reach that Vitality point to begin with, so buffering this is much better and preventing your defenders from taking those injuries. Essence of Fortification. This one may take a little bit longer to earn, but this 5% more block is huge and probably the most important one for a defender, because this just increases their flat-out damage negation to any attacks they block, aka frontward-facing attacks. And with gear to ensure that all attacks essentially are frontward-facing, this is enormous for them. Next, I would suggest the Essence of Deflection. As your tank, they should be the most forward unit in your party, drawing the fire to them. This includes a lot of ranged attacks, so mitigating those incoming sniper shots is very useful. And lastly, I would say the Essence of Armor. The more armor they have, the tankier they are. 3 armor by the end of the game may not seem like a whole lot. Every bit does help, but you can notice a huge difference in this, I think, as you are leveling up through the game. You can get this essence relatively early on, and when you first unlock it, that 3 armor can definitely be a lifesaver. In my opinion and experiences, these really are the only 4 essences you really need to be concerned with for your defenders. They by far contribute the most to increasing your defender's tankiness and survivability, and avoiding needing to bench them, especially if you're using Sir Mordred as you need him on those story missions. This just, for me, nets the best results possible. Moving on to the Arcanists and the Sages, they generally aren't very demanding for essences, actually. These classes are both extremely strong within their own skill trees and very well self-contained capabilities, and just can operate at around the same capacity with or without essences. I see this as a strength of the classes because it means they are just so good and efficient at what they do no essences really provide a significant bonus for them. This may feel a little lame because you feel like you're not really able to add a whole lot to them to make them better. That's not really a problem, I think. Because of this really opens them up to be much more flexible to your own personal taste and what essences you want to put on them. That being said, there are still a couple that I would suggest that do offer some impact to their playstyles. For either of these classes, you're going to be wanting to take the essence of Spellcraft. This +2 Spellcraft is really important on the map side, the campaign level, as you are journeying around. Spellcraft will enable you to tell what a totem does, what a shrine does, and find these extra chests for relic dust and gear. If you are running both an Arcanist and a Sage in your party, I would recommend putting it on the Arcanist. The Arcanist naturally has some higher spellcraft, so with this essence, it will let you hit these spellcraft checks much earlier, and then you don't need to worry about taking some of those skills that provide that +1 spellcraft. If you are not running an Arcanist, then I very highly suggest putting this on your Sage. They only reach 2 spellcraft by default, so they will not be able to hit those spellcraft checks late in the game without this essence, and those shrines, those totems, they can make a significant difference in combat. Next, I would suggest the Essence of Observation for your Arcanists. This increases the range of ranged skills by 1. This is incredibly powerful on Arcanists as they already have the highest range in the game, so increasing this further will allow them to just blast foes from incredibly safe range. The most important recommendation I would make for an Arcanist, however, would be the Essence of Speed. Arcanists are very AP demanding classes, because once you reach Tier 3 and unlock Mindstorm, they will be putting out the most abilities in a single turn compared to any other class by far. Their constant ability to cycle cooldowns and keep casting more and more spells and hexes means having a larger pool of AP allows them to just keep this cycle going for longer. And because of this cooldown cycling and this Mindstorm chain of just throwing out a million things in a single turn, having this extra 1 AP to their base pool can make a noticeable difference when a lot of their hexes can be reduced to a cost of 1. This next essence is the Essence of Warding, and I don't think is really crucial for either, but it does grant them some damage mitigation against enemy spellcasters, as I generally don't put this on my defender, plenty tanky already, and I do find that my own spellcasters do get targeted a fair amount of time by my enemy spellcasters. Having 25% resistance to these enemy spells is just helpful for what are relatively squishy party members, and some enemies have those AoEs, Arcanists especially, they can have some pretty high AP cost abilities, so sometimes you just want to throw out all the spells and do as much as possible and then realize, oh, I don't have enough AP to get out of this AoE anymore, so at least this way the damage they're taking will be reduced. The last two are primarily for Sages in the way I like to play the game. The Essence of Constitution and Willpower. My Sages provide a lot of team utility and don't really build into damage dealing. That's not what I use them for, so I want to help ensure that they are always available to provide some utility on any given turn. To do this, I want to make sure that their debuffs applied to them, status conditions, CC effects, can be mitigated. These two essences together go a long way to ensure that they can always provide this utility that I like. 50% mental debuff resist and 50% physical debuff resist. This just helps ensure that they will always be useful and never skip one of their turns. As for the last class, Marksman, if you're brave enough to be using them in the late game, unfortunately they are not very strong right now. There are hopes and some rumors that they will be getting some buffs in the next balance patch. Here's hoping. But as it stands now, their damage is just so low that the Essence of Mutilation just kind of feels mandatory, because when you hit that 10% and you deal that double damage, it brings it in line with your primary damage dealer to some degree. And this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier as a secondary damage dealer. Marksmen are never going to be your primary damage dealer, but can offer some ranged utility and some ranged damage. so this is a very good natural fit for them, in my view. Another obvious natural pick would be the Essence of Observation. They are a ranged damage dealer sort of utility, so increasing their range is obviously very beneficial to them. And lastly, the Essence of Speed. Marksmen kind of have some weird AP economy where a lot of the time you can either get 2 attacks in and that's it, or move some and get 1 attack in. This is generally remedied by getting some movement AP on them through some skills and gear, but giving them that 1 extra AP just gives them a little more wiggle room to help ensure you can be hitting those 2 attacks per round as much as possible. With all of this in mind, your essences are just much better served going to really anyone else, sadly. Now, going into defensive essences, we have immunity to status conditions, bleeding, burning, poison, stun, knockdown, and blind. Immunity to these first 3 aren't very impactful. Not a lot of enemies use these against you, and the damage from them usually isn't very high. These last 3, however, these 3 are quite good. These conditions prevent your characters from doing anything with their turns, or making it much harder to get kills. I usually like to use one of these, any really kind of works, on my primary damage dealer to reduce the chances of their kill capacity being minimized. Which one usually does depend on if I get any gear that provides immunities to one of these status conditions. In general, however, stun is the most common to be used against you, so this would be the best one to pick if you get no gear that offers a status condition immunity. Curtailing off of this, we also have some status damage essences as well. This is burning, bleeding, and poison. I would say do not use these except for on specific characters. Their impact on anyone else will be fairly minimal in comparison, at least in my experience. Burning most definitely goes best with Merlin, as he has a lot of fire spells and the best fire spells. If you choose not to take Merlin in your run, then Ector is a decent backup if you choose to use Ector, as he is the other Arcanist that has fire spells. Bleeding most definitely goes best with the Red Knight. He has the most bleeds out of any hero in the game, and also has the highest bleed damage. If you are not going with the Tyrant alignment on your playthrough, then this essence is an okay early game option. You can give this to a hero that you know you'll probably be replacing later on, as the bleed damage really does fall off pretty heavily with most of these other heroes. And poison is definitely going to Sir Tristan. Tristan is the heaviest poison user and the highest damage dealing poison user. However, if you are not using Tristan, then your next best option is likely going to be one of the Marksmen. Many of them have multiple poison abilities, and they would benefit the most off of this. There are some other Vanguards that do also have some poison in their kits, but you will be better off going with different essences than this one. There are some other Vanguards that do have poison talents they can take, so they can benefit some off of this, but I really think you're better off not using this as one of the 4 slots on your Vanguard and going with one of the other ones I've already talked about. Now, lastly, we're going to get in a category I like to call flex essences. Kicking this off are the Slayer essences. We have Lost Slayer, Picked, Seelie and Unseelie are lumped into one, and Fomorian. These Slayer essences provide a 25% damage bonus against the different enemy types in the game, excluding Brigands. This is a very large damage boost, but obviously very situational and sort of niche. Because of this, these are not ideal for your primary damage dealers because you want them to be as strong as possible against everyone. So what do I mean when I call them flex essences? What I mean is these are just flexible, and you can really put them on anyone that has an open slot. If you have extra essence slots on your primary team of heroes, you can just put these in and you will stand to gain from it. Extra damage on your other heroes is helpful, even if this damage is situational, and you have space for them anyways because you don't have any specific other essence that you think can really benefit this character. What is and isn't a flex essence to you will vary from other people for sure, because this is largely determined by what you determine is a priority how you like to build your characters, and how you like to play the game in general. Personally, I even consider the debuff resistance essences to be somewhat of a flex essence, as depending on certain playthroughs, I have moved them around a little bit. A couple other flex essences would be the essence of dodge, as I really only prefer to use this on characters that have dodge built into their skill tree already, so this is like Boudicca or the Fairy Knight. However, if I'm not using them on my playthrough, and I have an empty slot, like I only have 3 on my Sage for example, there's no 4th that is really vital for me to give to them, why not give it to the Sage? The essence of Salubrity is another example of a flex essence. This grants extra vitality, which in ideal situations, you shouldn't need this because you want to be avoid taking vitality damage, and therefore, by extension, avoiding injuries, which means avoiding downtime through either the hospice or the cathedral. However, on higher difficulties, sometimes you can't avoid taking some vitality damage, and obviously having more vitality means there's more health you need to burn through before your character dies. So this can really just go on anyone that you think is having a hard time staying alive. The essence of resilience grants extra injury tokens, which generally, if you're doing well, would maybe be for Arcanists or Marksman, as they have the lowest default amount of injury tokens. This should only be used, really though, if you notice one of your characters is taking injuries consistently. This will obviously prevent those dreaded injury debuffs and maybe keep them out of the cathedral. And lastly is the essence of mending. This heals vitality at the end of a mission. This mostly is going to be for players on very hard, maybe also on hard as well, as there are some difficulty spikes. And only if you're constantly taking a lot of vitality damage to a certain hero. If it's widespread, you have a lot of heroes that are taking this vitality damage, look at the one that you think is most important, that you want to keep taking on the missions, that you think is carrying the most weight, and this will definitely help mitigate the amount of time they need to spend in something like the hospice. And that wraps up all of the essences, my thoughts on them, and what I think their best applications are. I hope this helps anyone out there struggling to decide on who to give what, or how long should I be holding on to this. At the end of the day, though, my ultimate advice is don't worry about it too hard. You're probably going to be making mistakes with your essence assignments. I've done it. I'm on my 4th playthrough, and I've done it again because I just forget I have another character I'm going to be using later that could benefit from this more than this early game one. It's alright. Even on very hard, you don't need to min-max your essences to beat the game. Obviously, doing so will make the game easier. You may have a bit of a smoother time going through, but the game is balanced well enough in a way where you don't need to min-max to still beat the game. You're probably going to make a mistake or two. That's alright. You can still beat the game anyways. If you've made it to the end of this video, thanks for watching.